Welcome to our podcast, Minds Over Media. I'm your host, Kara Hutchinson from the Southwestern Ohio Instructional Technology Association, or SOITA. Today, my co-host is my colleague, Matt Gerberick. Today, we're talking to Dr. Srivi Ramasubramanian, founding director of CodeShift and professor at Syracuse University, to continue our conversation about media literacy. But first, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with media?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in South India, and communication was a very new discipline when I went to college. So my dad basically gave me a year to try it out to see how I do, and that's how I got into college for this
Okay.
really new degree, and it was offered only in a men's college at that time and in my city. So just my course in communication was co-ed. And as you can imagine, it really made me uh, understand the gender dynamics in college, because otherwise I was always in like a co-ed environment. So now to be in a predominantly male college made me very aware of the ways in which media shape gender identities. So a lot of my interests in media and gender, and later on with race, kind of emerged from that background.
So, how would you define media literacy based on all of the work that you've done?
Yeah, because my undergrad was in visual communication, actually, specifically. So it was on media production and creation, but as much of on that, but also on the social impact of media. So that was also covered. So because of that orientation, I've always understood that media literacy is so much more than just knowing how to produce content or even how to consume content. It's about, how do we analyze it? How do we think about the impact it has on who we are and how it shapes our identities and how it shapes our social structures? So I think that my experiences and lived realities have helped me understand that media literacy is so much more than knowing how to use the media in a literal kind of sense of the individual competencies, and I always connect it to other types of related skills and competencies.
How can teachers approach media literacy in meaningful
Yeah.
ways within their classroom with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens?
Yeah, that's basically my entire career. But
Okay.
try to sum it up
Great
briefly.
question.
So one thing is to kind of recognize that media is just one of many social discourses, right? And always to kind of keep that lens in mind, even when we are teaching media education, media literacy, is that media is a storyteller in our society, and we have to ask about what stories are being shared in media. So when we start looking at that first, then media literacy is also about recognizing what stories are missing and what perspectives are stories being shared from, right? Like we all know that stories can be told from multiple characters' perspectives, right? Or we can think of retelling a story in our own voice, right? So then we have to think about, okay, what are the dominant narratives that stories or stories that are being said through the media, and how can we think about what is the viewpoints, perspectives that we value in the media, and does that reflect society, the communities about whom the story is being shared. So I always also ask my students to come with an open mind and be aware of their emotions, because a lot of times when we're talking about media literacy education, we are thinking so much about facts, we are thinking so much about actual skills, but we don't engage with emotions as much. So, as a
Mm.
teacher, one of the first things I do in my classroom is to say to my students, hey, what are you feeling? Are you feeling worry right now, excitement, enthusiasm? Check in with your feelings. Because so
Mm.
much of this work on DEI is about feelings. And
Yeah.
sometimes it could be guilt, it could be feelings of, oh my gosh, I have this privilege, but I don't know what to do with it, right? Or it can be feelings of discomfort. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing all these things, and I know this is how I engage with media. So I'm uncomfortable in this conversation. So I kind of address it on day one, and then we set the tone for classroom discussions to be much more open because of this. And that's very important, I think. Like, if we want to talk about DEI, is to engage with issues of feelings and emotional. So I talk about it in terms of emotional intelligence,
Uh-huh.
right? So,
Okay.
so I say this class will help you not just learn facts and how to use the media, but also help you develop emotional awareness, empathy,
Mm.
perspective taking. And these are things that are really important in society, because media can actually lead to desensitization, for instance, right? Like, so we have to be aware of our emotions, how are we responding to one another in the classroom, and so that becomes a basis for how I get into this work in the classroom.
And I think that's, I like that that's the focus on the people.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's always on people, on society, on relationships,
And that's so important in anything that, I think sometimes we get really focused on the stuff and we teach a subject and we don't teach
right.
people. So I really like that approach, and how
Hmm.
you've created a safe space in your
Uh-huh.
classroom for people to feel
Hmm.
like it's safe to talk about feelings, and
Right,
that's the real focus of the class, and then we'll
right,
address the details and the subject matter through
right.
that. So I think that's really cool. Um, so we talk about the DEI as far as like societal issues and bias and social justice, which is, a large part of what we hear about, and it's, obviously it's a lot of things newsworthy about those advancements or hopeful advancements in those areas. How are, in a similar kind of a question, how can educators, K-12 teachers address that, and knowing that certain sometimes those are kind of emotionally charged
Yes,
topics, and
yes.
nobody wants to be on the brunt end of that. So how do we address those things in a way that that's positive and productive?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I do in my class is I'm okay with pauses, and I actually build in time for reflection, because as you say, a lot of these issues are very heated topics. So we might respond immediately in ways that we then might regret, right? So what I say is that I actually build in, for instance, like a journaling, weekly journaling. The last 10 minutes of my class, my students just reflect, what have I learned? So it's a learning journal. So they write about, what have I learned this week? How is that going to impact me? How am I going to change based on what I have learned this week? How does this relate to what we learned in the previous weeks or other things I'm learning or my life? So this gives them a space to actually put down, reflect, and kind of think about, hey, actually, what are the things I've learned? And sometimes I'll say, don't just put down facts. It's fine to put down feelings, because if you're asking like an athlete, about their learning journal, of course they're going to say, I struggled to jump that height this week. I was frustrated. I couldn't jump as high as I wanted to, or whatever it is, right? And then they're going to say, hey, this week I actually made it. I jumped high. And here's how I felt. I felt fabulous. So I tell them, I give them examples of how a learning journal in a media context should also talk about, reflections on their media use, their media consumption. So, what did they feel this week? For instance, we are covering video games and masculinity in class this week. So, some of my gamer students who are men, they were saying, thank you for discussing masculinity, because oftentimes when we talk about, let's say, gender and media, we don't even talk about positive aspects of masculinity. So let us embrace all aspects of ourselves, and that's how we kind of get into this work, is to come back to the self. Okay, now how does this affect you? What did you learn from this about yourself, about the media, and how is it going to change how you use the media? So I think that's a continued conversation through these journals that they then convert into a reflection paper. So I feel that this gives some space for people to say, I don't agree with what you said. Sometimes they're not comfortable saying that in the class out loud,
Mhm.
Hmm.
but there is a sort of a safe space in writing. And writing allows you to kind of pause and then share, right? So or they also, I give space for small group discussions, so they can just get together and say, what the heck was she saying? I have no
I like that you mentioned that opportunity to pause because
hmm.
we're in such a whether it's social media or it's just everybody's in a hurry all the time, and I don't know
Right.
where everybody's going, but they're always in a hurry to get there.
Mhm.
And we want to know the answer fast, and whoever puts their hand up first, and we don't give kids time to
Mm.
really think through a well thought out response. Sometimes it's
Right.
the first
Especially
answer
in
is the
heated
is
moments,
yeah.
I just say,
Mhm.
I know this is an emotional topic, so let's just pause. Why don't you just put down few of your thoughts and then discuss with a partner, and then let's share some. This is what, sometimes when it gets really heated, then I myself need a pause, right? Like I need to
Mhm.
get my thoughts together. So I'll say, oh, let's take a break and just write down some key things on your mind, and that helps,
Mhm.
break up the
Hmm.
moment.
I think everybody
Yeah.
should take your class.
Thank you.
I
Tell me,
think
tell my
I
everybody
know.
boss
needs
that.
this. Let's talk about there's a new item on the menu that's
Yeah.
it's not new, but it's new, like to a lot of
Newish.
people.
Hmm.
AI generated
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
media.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
I'm curious, and when Kara and I were
mhm,
talking with you, that
yeah,
this is something that's been a very hot topic in
right.
education, especially. And
Yes,
how do you address this with your students, or
yes,
has this changed? Have you pivoted on some things and had to
yes,
rethink media
yeah.
as we know it?
So, definitely it is top of mind for a lot of educators, and it's made me think about, okay, as a teacher, as a educator, what really are the things I want my students to learn? And this is where this whole framing of I need to go beyond facts
Mhm.
to different types of competencies, thinking about what does that my course really teach my students? What do I want them to learn? And then I felt, especially in the AI context, that hey, AI is going to generate facts for us. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time teaching them a lot of this stuff. That's why, in any case, my courses always kind of focused on the self, reflection, feelings, emotional intelligence. So those things AI is not going to be able to teach you.
Yeah.
So I feel that that is something that I can share in terms of, critical perspectives, asking the right questions,
Mm-hmm.
learning to ask the right questions as a critical thinker is something that, AI is not going to teach you. You need to be able to drive the conversation. So I tell them that AI is like any other tool. You have to be first clear on what your goals are, and then use tools for those goals. For that, you need to know who you are. What do you want from life? What tools do I need? What support do I need? So it has to start with the self, goal setting, you know, and then we can look at AI as a support system.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have changed my assignments. I've added these in class journaling type things, right? And
Uh-huh.
I've also told them that, listen, AI is not going to teach you how to be collaborative with others, how to relate with others, how to, be a good person in a team context. This class will teach you those things, how to negotiate, how to have that. I mean, AI can teach you to some extent, but I use I say use AI as much as you want for learning about facts, but
Mm-hmm.
be clear that it's probably giving you rubbish. So if you're not going to verify the fact
Right, thanks.
and take
Yeah.
it at face value, then you're losing out on the key dimension of the class, is like questioning the quality of data, right? The
Mm-hmm.
quality of information. So there, then we have a discussion about trust with media, those types of
Mm-hmm.
things, So I think I'm fine because my classes are anyway focused so much on this type of dynamic reflection that
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for me to pivot.
Yeah.
But I do also, I've changed. I used to do these, uh, essay type questions, which are, now I have made that more. I've also started doing a lot more in class work, which otherwise I would have assigned as homework,
Okay.
right? So then I'm like, okay, I give them the questions in advance,
Mm-hmm.
and then I say, you can prepare, you can use whatever, but then right now you need to discuss and you need to talk about it. So how are you going to converse about a topic with
Mm-hmm.
others? It's different. You can retrieve information from AI, but you are the one who has to talk about it with others.
Yeah.
So how are you going to, what is, use your own words? Is
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to express the same thing in your own words? So that's how I've been approaching. But yeah, I completely get it. AI is another tool. It's very related to media. I connect it to data now. I don't only talk about media literacies, I'm talking about data literacies. So,
Mm-hmm.
media literacy is connected to digital literacies, right? Information literacies, also data literacies are connected to critical algorithmic literacies. So that's how we have that conversation. I've devoted another entire unit. The last unit is going to be future of media.
Oh,
So
Ah.
then that is another change I'm making. Like, what is going to be the future of media? Where do you think AI is going to go? What's the role of media literacy? That's going to be the full conversation for our class. I want them to tell me.
do you already have the
Yeah.
answer to that? We're all wanting to know what that answer
We'll see
is.
what they say, because I want to know how they're using it and where they see the next, because these are smart kids. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious to learn from them as well.
Sure. In any technology, when we're talking about students, presumably younger than us, of course, we tend to, as an older person, tend to look at this and go, "Wow, this is really amazing."
Yeah,
And for them, not only is it like they've just always known that things like that existed, they can't imagine not having it. But this
yeah,
is like the worst it'll ever be for them. Like they're going to look back at this in 10 years ago. Do you guys remember that Chat GPT thing? gosh, that was terrible. Like you had to actually type in prompts, you know. So
Yeah.
it's just going to be interesting to see, and as quickly as these things evolve, what it does look like in the future.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to hear the answers that your students come up with. And
Right.
the other thing, and then I'm going to move on to, is there's some fear or some apprehension behind AI, and
Mm-hmm.
how some people feel like it's going to take the place of humans. But from what
Yeah.
I listen to you say, and I agree with you that if it's done right and it's treated as a tool and as a support or as a peer, it should actually bring people back together again, because
Exactly.
it's going to require us to have those conversations and share and collaborate, because we're not spending so much time looking up facts and
Right.
just putting out things that are already out, and write the essay and then that's the end. Well, if
Right.
that's the whole point of the class, this is a
Yeah.
pretty simple class. But if I have
Yes.
to talk about
Exactly.
it, even if AI creates it, I still have to understand, and like you said, know that it's not rubbish, and
Right.
know that
Hmm.
it's factual, so that I can speak intelligently about it and not.
Right.
So I really
Exactly.
like all that.
So, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is that media literacy has focused a lot on the individual
Mm.
and not so much in a community context. So, using a equity lens, I've also started thinking a lot about, which communities have the media tools, have the educator resources, to be having these conversations, and where are the places where uh, this work still needs to be done, and
Mm.
what type of support are teachers getting from principals and superintendents for media literacy work, because so many schools, the teachers are very restricted because of these types of resource constraints, or the priorities of the school don't match up what the educators priorities are. So I have been thinking about ways in which we can mm, provide some more tools. So we have been working on this thing called the Equitable Media Literacy field guide for educators. So now we
Oh,
are
nice.
creating some resources for educators, middle school, high school, social science teachers, English teachers, whether technology teachers, bringing them together to talk about uh, what are the resources you have within the context of your classroom, your student community. What does DEI look like? What are the
Mm.
topics that will be relevant to you? Where what is the type of support you need? And how can we bridge the gaps between, let's say, media creators, content creators, media educators, media research scholars? How do we kind of bridge these groups together? Because a lot of times I'm seeing these silos of knowledge. So, how do we build capacity? How do we provide support by simply even making those connections happen? So maybe in my own
Yeah.
community, I'm thinking about, how can I connect better with the K to 12 teachers, so that what we are doing in terms of research or the innovative methods that we are using or they are using, we both can benefit from those types of conversations. So I think having some ways in which to bring media literacy across different disciplines in conversation with one
Hmm.
another, but also across, you know, media industry, media education, and university settings, school settings, research, all these together. So I've been running a nonprofit called Media Rise, which does that.
Oh, nice.
And also, I have a lab, Code Shift, which is a collaboratory for data equity. social healing, inclusive futures and transformation. So we do a lot of like media literacy workshops for resettled refugees in our community. Here, my students lead those workshops, so have led those workshops. So there are many such ways in which we can foster these connections at the community level to bring the change. So going beyond the classroom to the
Mm-hmm.
community is really important.
Thanks for listening to our Minds Over Media podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today and learned something new. You can find the show notes, resources, and information on earning contact hours for listening at teachercampus.org. Minds Over Media is produced by the Southwestern Ohio Instructional Technology Association in partnership with the University of Cincinnati.